Hello, today we're talking about a tool that completely changed the quality of my music. And this is a process that, especially early on, is often skipped out and should not be because it's extremely important and it can completely change how your music sounds. And that is the mixing and mastering process, which I know for me, especially early on, I absolutely hated. I didn't fully understand it. I was a composer, I wrote music. Once it's written, it's done, great, I can send it off, I can bounce it down and go away. But no, it's not as simple as that, sadly. And if you want to cheat, this is how you cheat. Isotope do a great product called Ozone 9, and this completely changed the quality of my music because, as I said, I wasn't mixing and mastering properly. I didn't completely understand it. And what this product does is there's a master assist button, which if you press and play your track, it basically masters it for you. Kind of. I would still tweak it slightly, and the more familiar you get with it, the better you are at mixing and mastering your own music. It definitely taught me and showed me consistencies where I was going wrong and what I needed to do, and it made my music sound so much better. But what actually is it? It's a plugin that goes into your digital audio workspace of choice, and it does a number of things. So there's an equalizer, there's a maximizer slash limiter, of course a compressor as well, and also a really nice imager. And it will listen to your music and kind of set different parameters in order to ultimately make your music sound as best as it possibly can. Maybe you've got too much low end, it puts that down. Maybe you've got too much high end, puts that down. Or maybe you need more of one, less of the other. It basically does most of the thinking for you. And there are 3 different versions of it. There's the Elements, there's the Standard, and then there is the Pro. And there is also a 10-day free trial, well worth trying. And I say this in all my videos, do not buy them full price. I remember when I got the initial version of this, it was the Ozone 9 Elements, which I would definitely recommend for starting out. I believe there's a comparison down here. I did not pay $129. It came with all their other products in element form for like £39. That was including VAT. It was a sale. They're always doing them, and it's a crazy good deal because you got Ozone, you got RX, Neutron, and a couple of reverbs as well, all for like £39. And it was the element forms, but it allowed me to kind of try it out, get a feel. Do I like it? What do I like? What do I not like? And then eventually on sale, I bought Ozone 9 Standard. But the biggest difference is from nothing to Ozone. There is a more of a subtle difference between these two, and especially if you're going more professionally into composing and producing music, I would highly recommend eventually going over the Standard. It's just a lot more flexible. The Master's Assistant goes a bit deeper into your music instead of just the basics. The Advanced, unless you're mixing, mastering, and you're a producer, that's your full-time job, and you really fully understand these things, and you're not just pressing that Master's Assist every single time, I wouldn't recommend Ozone 9. Other people might say different things, but personally, I'm extremely happy with Ozone 9 Standard. I kind of have a basic understanding of mixing and mastering now, and I find this plugin so helpful because it does a number of different things instead of having to get my EQ up and then picking a different maximizer slash limiter, putting a compressor on. It's all in one little thing, and I absolutely love it. And now we're going to show you how effective it actually is. So we're going to jump into Logic. Now on the left, I have the Elements, and on the right, you have the Standard right here. And this is what happens as soon as you load it up. You can see already on the Elements, we have the equalizer, the imager, and the maximizer, and that is all you have. Those are the different things it comes with. You also have some presets, which are here, all-purpose mastering, genre specific and instrument specific as well. There's a couple that I definitely look into, but if I'm honest, this is the button you want to be pressing. and it's absolutely brilliant. But with the standard edition, there is so much more. You have other little bits and bobs. There's a vintage mode as well, which has a subtle difference. It puts a nice little bit of grit on it. It is quite effective. And with the Master's Assist, there is a vintage mode and not just the modern mode, which this one comes with. It also goes, as I said, deeper into your track when you actually hit next. And so what I'm now going to do is show you how good this can make your music sound. Now, this track, A Hero's Cry, was the first piece I properly did with sample libraries. This was done wholly with Albion 1. So this is quite an old track of mine. I definitely did not mix and master this properly. And so we're going to just run it through Ozone and see how it sounds. We're going to put it on just the elements now, and we're going to show you how it sounds with and without it. So this is the track without it. I'll show you a little section of it. So that gives you the general gist. It's a bit muddy. It could do with a bit of more high end, less low. So we're going to make those changes, but I'm not going to do it. The machine's going to do it for me. With this, as it says here, for the best result, play the loudest portion of your track. We can see here is the loudest portion. We're going to use our Master's Assistant button up here. We're going to press next, and then we're going to hit play. And there you have it. You didn't even need to know that the low end was a bit too much and the high end was not enough, because the machine does it for you. And that's the beautiful thing about Ozone, especially if you're not familiar with mastering. Just clicking Master's Assistant, it does it for you. It sets a maximizer and a limiter so it doesn't go above -1, and we just needed to push it up just a little bit, set all the character. You don't need to fully understand this. And now if we listen back to the beginning, bypass it. I hope you're wearing headphones, because I can hear quite a big difference between on and off, and I gave you plenty of bits there to kind of hear. The difference is massive, and as I said, if you don't understand the mastering process, this can really be the difference between a good final track and a muddy final track. And that's the beautiful thing about elements. And if your track's not loud enough as well, the maximizer will help with that, and it will set those levels and just give it that little bit more oomph, a little bit more punch. And the next thing I really want to talk about is this imager here. As you can see, it's not really come on. If I turn it on, you can see actually the stereo field. There's lots going on there. But what happens if we don't have a good stereo field? So we're going to move over to this first track over here, which I did a little recording on my Moog grandmother, and we're going to stick the imager on this little recording because the Moog grandmother is mono, but I want a stereo image. So let's turn the other bits and bobs off, and we're just going to look at the imager. So this is how it sounds without it. So you can see that it's definitely mono, it's going right through the middle. You get a nice little image there of that. And now we're going to turn it into stereo and we're going to make it nice and wide. That's definitely stereo, and it sounds so much different. There's so much more going on. There's two different modes. There is quite a difference between the two. Have a flick between them. There is quite a bit of difference, and you can make it as wide as you want or as thin as you want. And that's what I love about this plugin. It really is simple to use and really, really, really user-friendly, especially for those who are ill-experienced, or even those who have a lot more experience. And in comparison, when we actually look at the standard edition, especially when it comes to the imager, if we add that in here and add an imager. Now, the main difference here is you can add frequency bands. So if I want my low end to be more stereo, while my upper end to be a lot more mono, we can do that. Or the other way around. So if you want your bass to be equally between the two, but you want that upper end to have a bit more excitement, you can do that. And you can solo it as well. I really like this. So you can actually focus on those frequencies. And the same with the equalizer. And this is the same with the actual Elements version as well. I believe you can actually go into this and go solo. So you can actually just listen to those frequencies. If we drag Elements back down onto my track down here and actually have a listen, you can focus on the different frequencies, which is a really nice feature of that. So you can really hear, well, what have they actually singled out and what are they getting rid of? Or what have they added? And that can be really helpful, especially if you're learning. So what else is different between these two different versions? The vintage mode, of course, and let's run A Hero's Cry through the vintage mode. So let's turn it on, pick our loudest point. We're going to stick on vintage, click that, and see what happens. So you can see that there's a lot more going on with that Master's Assistant. It's looking at many more things, which is the advantage of the standard edition. And so now we've got a vintage EQ on, we have our standard EQ as well. And as we can see, very similar to the Elements, which is over here. Let's stick that there. It really did need a lot of that lows pushing down and those highs pushing up. Maximizer, we can probably see something very similar, except we have different modes here and it's gone for a more classical take. If I'm honest, this, of all the things I tweak within Ozone, sometimes it does set the maximizer a little bit high for me, so I do tweak that just a little bit. Adds a little bit more character here. We have a vintage limiter as well. There's a tube and an analog as well as the modern version. It picks that for me. There was no extreme dynamic changes, so it didn't put the compressor on, and a little bit of vintage EQ. So let's kind of compare these two. Let's have a listen. So let's turn everything off for a start and just listen to this track as it is. And now we're going to turn on elements. Everything off, and now standard. A lot more punchy with the standard. It's got that more compressed, high-endish sort of vintage sound. If we did a modern take on it, let's do that. So if we go back into our Masters Assist, I want a modern version. I'm gonna hit play. I'm gonna go next. You also have this thing called dynamic EQ when you use this one. Equals everything out just a little bit more as well. So let's play it now with nothing and can I give a comparison of all these. I'll use the bypass button this time so we don't get that click. So you can see that I tweaked the maximizer a bit. I wanted a bit more punch. There's a lot less difference, as you can probably hear, than when we were comparing the vintage and the elements. As I said, it's a lot more true to how elements was. And really, it's a very subtle difference between these two, especially when we're both going through the modern. And I haven't really tweaked much myself and just done the Masters Assistant. You do have that dynamic EQ, but you can see what that's doing here. You can see when those bits are getting a bit loud, it's bringing them down, which is what's nice about the dynamic EQ. It's quite literally EQ that adapts. Is it enough difference to spend a lot more money? Personally, I use it for a lot wider range of things. It's a lot more tweakable. I do like the vintage mode for certain tracks. I do. I like the fact that the imager, I can do a lot more with it. And so I eventually upgraded to the standard, but I was using the elements for the longest time, and that's really where the difference is. Nothing, if you don't know what you're doing, I would highly recommend the elements. Now, you don't have to, of course, have Ozone to be able to do what we're doing. A lot of this is just the machine listening and thinking. That's really what you're kind of paying for. And I must admit, it does have a nice equalizer, imager, and limiter. We can actually do a lot of this within Logic if we're just using our ears. As I said, I could hear the fact that my EQ was off and that I wanted a lot less low end and a lot more high end. So we're going to stick that in there. And we're also going to stick in an adaptive limiter. We'll put that in instead. So we're going to go, yeah, that looks about right, if I'm honest. Let's have a quick listen and adjust those. So now let's compare everything. Let's get elements up. We're going to skip the standard one for now. First, we're going to listen to everything turned off. Let's add in our Logic stuff. Personally, to me, Ozone is a little bit crisper, a little bit clearer, while Logic is not quite as clear as Ozone, but the biggest difference again is actually mastering your music. EQ is so important. Just a EQ and the adaptive limiter alone makes a huge difference. But I hope this has been helpful. We've kind of gone through quite a bit here. We've talked about Ozone, but we've also talked about you don't actually need it. But if you're starting out, it can be really helpful to get you those preliminaries, because I found this was quite a common problem with my music. But it's really nice to have everything in one without having to click through different menus. And it is a beautiful little piece of kit. There's other little bits it does as well. You can mono, swap, gain match. Elements is great, and you can get it for a great price on sale. Don't buy anything full price. They do sell bundles, and iZotope do a lot of great software, which I'll probably talk about in other videos. But that's it. I'm going to stop rambling. We're going to finish the video there. Like and subscribe if you want more comments about any of the stuff I've talked about. I say this all the time. If you guys are confused about anything I'm saying or want me to go into more detail about anything, I don't mind doing that. And eventually I'm hoping to do live streams as well. So if we get to that stage, I'll happily walk people through different bits and bobs of my process, and we'll have fun doing some live streams. But that's for the future. The video is going to end there. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one.